Welcome. Take It Up with Jessica Lee. I'm here with Joshua Schnoll, who is the VP of Marketing and Alliances from AppDirect. Hi, Joshua.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
I am delighted that you're here because, AppDirect has got a fascinating business model, been around for 10 years, but I wanted to get your take on the evolution of IT selling, and also because you're in marketing, let's talk about marketing, go-to-market best practices.
Sure, absolutely. I can certainly give you a little bit of background on AppDirect.
Yes.
Part of kind of where the company came from, one of our founders, Daniel Sachs, had a family furniture business up in Canada. And during the Great Recession, they were not able to pull through. And part of the reason why is they didn't have access to the right technologies. They were doing a lot of things kind of in old school manual way. And what Dan realized is that there was an opportunity for a lot of these small and medium-sized businesses to get better access to technology. And so that was kind of the nexus for how AppDirect got started. And then as we've evolved over time, so we started out selling to a lot of telecommunications companies where, they saw, this trend of, hey, you've got this explosion of technology that's coming out there. You also got the subscription model, which is very aligned to the telco, in terms of broadband and wireless, et cetera. So now you've got SaaS and then infrastructure as a service with sort of the pay-as-you-go models and things like that. But it was complex for them. It was really hard for a lot of these organizations to start selling software alongside their existing infrastructure. And so that's where AppDirect came in as a platform to allow them to do that, to begin selling Office 365 or G Suite, and then they began to sell other services, and so they wanted to onboard like a broad variety of different kinds of software. So we built out a broad catalog, and then what we realized is that a lot of those same software companies that we were bringing into the catalog were like, hey, I'd like to build my own ecosystem as well. So I want my own app ecosystem of trusted partners that are tightly integrated with my technology. And so our technology is very easy for that. So it's sort of like an app store in a box. And so we've worked with a lot of top software companies in terms of building out their own ecosystem of third-party products as well.
Yeah, so nowadays, because a lot of interaction creates a lot of data. And with a lot of data, you're saying these big suppliers now have data to sell back as intelligence.
And that's really interesting. So that gets into another set of our customers, so in manufacturing. And so you've got a lot of these big manufacturing customers. They'd used sort of a multi-tier distribution strategy where they weren't necessarily selling directly to the customer. But now, whether it's a giant power circuit that's probably powering this building that we're in right now, or some other robotic or motor, wherever it may be.
Or IoT devices.
IoT devices, all of these things are out there and they're generating data.
Yes.
And what a lot of these manufacturers want to do is they want to create that direct relationship with the end customer. And they've got this data. And so how do they package that up to sell that as a subscription service?
Yes.
And so that creates a new revenue stream for them as opposed to just selling the overall device. And so you've got that data, and then you can build software analytics on top of it. So you build predictive maintenance algorithms that layer on top of that.
Right.
So we're working with a lot of really large manufacturers doing that same kind of thing as well.
I see. So it is an e-commerce platform for them, an ecosystem.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's talk about marketing because
Sure.
you're in charge of marketing. And it's very interesting in that Joshua is in charge of marketing and also sales enablement, which I find very fascinating. And I want to touch on that side of the marketing responsibility. Often I hear companies having silos, sales own sales enablement, even though marketing creates a lot of the content, customer success also creates their own content. But you actually have managed to be a lot more efficient with owning the content, but then serving that to the sales team, to the customer success. So let's hear about that. How did you come about in this model?
Sure. So it really, came about a little bit organically, kind of within the company. And so, our sales teams were incredibly focused on selling. Our sales operations folks really just trying to kind of keep the numbers going and, looking at the pipeline and commissions and all those kinds of things. And the marketing team was delivering a lot of the content, as you had said. And so what we started out with was, a very informal program. So we had, one of our product marketers, an outstanding woman named Laura Stevenson, and I think that's actually really key for a successful program is that you've got the right people, and those people can work collaboratively across all of the company. And she was really one of those keys to allow us to do this. And so she was running a set of programs where she would bring in some of our product managers, some of the sales folks. They would talk about some of their wins and other kinds of things, but it's very informal. And what we realized is as we were beginning to expand our sales organization, we couldn't just do kind of 1 hour kind of webinars once a week and record it and then just have this catalog. We needed something that was searchable. We needed something that they could share content out with customers, that they could collaboratively kind of create things on their own. And so we needed to go invest in a platform that would allow us to do that. There's a lot of great platforms out there to do that. And it has both the learning capability and then the content sharing capability. I think one of the other key things about it is making sure that you've got really strong collaboration. We're talking a little bit before about, our sales enablement team is actually pretty small. We've got, 3 people basically, but it's an entire army. We have the entire company is really helping to provide content into that. So we have, individual sales folks who, because of the platform that we have for sales enablement, they can just go onto their phone, they can do it on their laptop, and they're like, hey, I just had this great sales interaction. I wanted to record sort of a quick snippet as to what were some of the things that I learned from that. We can put that up. We've got a channel where people can kind of go in and see that. Our sales leader also can go in, it's got a channel, can put sort of quick things in there as well, in addition to the more formal, structured kind of training that we do as well. One of the key things that we've realized, so one of the lessons we learned in terms of those sort of big, hour-long webinars that we had, there might be a small snippet of really great information that a sales rep or a customer success person wants to go back to. But if you have like an hour-long webinar that you got to figure out where that was, so we break down all of our trainings into 3 to 5 minute chunks. And they're labeled, they're indexed, so someone can go in, they can search for that. It was like, oh, what was that little tidbit on pricing, how to, objection handling related to pricing?
Yes, I know bit-sized content, right? It's like small bites, so that it's consumable, but it's tractable too, right? And then at the same time, I think that kind of content can then be distributed to the right audience if you have it in small bites.
Absolutely. And I mean, in the same way that all marketers know, like, you're not going to be producing like a giant, hour-long video for consumption that you want to sort of entice people in to start thinking about your technology. It's the same thing when you're working with a sales or a customer success audience. You want something that's going to be engaging for them, that's going to be easy to consume.
Right. So this content for sales enablement, you're leveraging that for customer success. And next step is really partner success too.
Correct. And so that's one of the great things in the way that we have this structured, is that same team is now scaling across. So we've had kind of an informal indirect sales program, and what we're really building out is sort of that formal indirect partner program right now. And what we're going to use is a lot of that same content, maybe there's 80% that we'll be able to sort of leverage over. And so as we're building that out, we can kind of go across the different audiences. So, for our SDR audience, for our AEs and our sales folks, for our customer success, and now for the partner audience as well.
So in this year, 2020, what are some of the key initiatives that you're going to be pushing then?
Well, obviously launching this partner program is going to be one of those really big initiatives for us. I think a couple of the other things that we're focused on is around efficiency. And one of the things that we realized last year is we just had a lot of manual process in our across our marketing teams. And so one great example of this was we have our most companies have sort of their customer event. We had our customer event, and the sort of system that we had for people to sign up for it wasn't necessarily directly talking into Salesforce. And so we had a bit of a manual process. And I was like, wait a minute, there's connectors to be able to do this. Let's automate this. And so across the team, going to have everyone think about like 1 or 2 manual processes that they're doing today. Right. Let's figure out how to automate that. And so over the course of the year, we'll prioritize those. If there's investment needed, we'll focus in on that investment, and we want to try and automate that throughout the year.
Right. And how about some challenges? What are you going to tackle this year to overcome?
I think, obviously one of the big challenges that everyone faces is around kind of hiring and retention, particularly for your marketing employees. And, in the San Francisco Bay Area, very competitive. So that's one piece that focused in on. On the retention side, one of the other, because there's lots of interesting companies. People are like, oh wait, looks over there. What's new for me? And one of the things we're looking to try and do a little bit is how do we keep people fresh and engaged? So how can we create sort of ways for them to experiment and do things that might be of interest to them, but also tie into the business? So can we carve out a set of budget and a set of time for people to try and experiment with new things that we're not necessarily saying, hey, this has got to deliver XYZ results. It's really about learning, learning for them and learning for us. So that's one of the other things I'm looking to try and implement. One, I think it helps us as a marketing organization to stay fresh and creative. But at the same time, I think from a retention standpoint, it can also help because people are able to kind of do something unique or new.
Right. That's fantastic. I think that's a very smart thing to do. I think that with the marketing field, there's a lot of new technologies and new methods. Have you tried anything that's different than last year that you're thinking of this year?
So I guess one of the areas that we are focused on is a little bit around a brand refresh. And so it's a little less kind of on the technology. It's kind of, I guess, going back true old school in terms of, when people think about a lot of B2B brands, they think about it as like, hey, it's not really necessarily emotional. Whereas you think a lot of consumer brands, there's a lot of emotion in that. And one of the things that we realized is that, B2B brands should have some of that emotional element to them as well. And so we're actually working with a really great agency right now in helping us to reposition our brand a little bit, to bring a little bit of that emotion into what it is that we do. And it ties into something that we've been doing over the last couple of years at our event where we have what we call digital heroes. And so these are people who are really driving change within their organization. Now, our digital heroes tend to be the folks that are a little bit more on the commerce or the business side, because obviously as a subscription commerce platform, it's trying to drive new business initiatives and those kinds of things. But really, creating a story and a brand that reaches out to that audience, those people that are trying to be the change agents within their company, and developing not only sort of brand story elements, but also kind of buyer enablement types of technology. If you're at a major manufacturer and your boss says, hey, we want to go create an app store, like the Apple App Store. And you're like, well, where do I start with that? And so,
call AppDirect.
Well, I hope that they will. But if you're able to create a set of, white papers or how-to guides of information that is like, oh, this is going to help me. And then not only just about, building that app store, but how do you drive that change within the organization? That's one of the biggest adoption, but also just building consensus, as a lot of the research shows, buying decisions, it's no longer one person who's making that buying decision. It's a broad group of people. So how do you, can we help provide tools to our champions to make it easier for that process? And so that's a lot of what we've been thinking about in terms of the brand. And how does that then tie into you as a successful person within the company and driving change? How can we tie that back to the AppDirect brand?
Well, thank you so much, Joshua, for being on the show to talk about AppDirect. Good luck with the initiatives. Thanks for the best practices that you're sharing with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's really been a pleasure.
There you have it, folks. Joshua Schnoll from AppDirect.